I am Sam. I'm drinking ginger and green tea. I'll admit it's a really difficult one because there's obviously birds song that I live for, the nightingale being one that I spend a lot of time with, but I couldn't listen to that forever and ever, you know, all the time. Right now I'm waking up every morning to the sound of a woodpecker drumming on the lime tree behind my bedroom, and that's the most glorious sound. It's the thing is about nature is you can never isolate one particular thing. Is it the sound of curlews or the wind in aspen trees or a stream, a chalk stream babbling? These are things that sonically, collectively create an orchestra. And for me, that is so important, is about when you hear the fullness. If you pulled out one instrument from an orchestra and listened to them play, it'd be like, that's really good, but it's always much more better when in ensemble. So for me, it's so lovely being able to note the sound this time of year in that kind of early beginnings of spring of a great tit. I adore great tit, or the wrens have just started singing at dawn. And they're such wonderful birds for kind of marking moments of the day and qualities of, you know, excitement in the branches. But singularly, I don't have a favourite. Well, I have over my life found, and I'm still working on this, the kind of I believe that everyone has an affinity to a different species, and that might be an earthworm, it might be an elephant. Some people go, I'm very wolf or bear, and like, you know, and like these big furry, you know, strong animals. And I found that we all have bits of our personality that resonate with a quality of a different species, and there are 4 birds that I found that represent for me what I think of as my different elements. So the earth, fire, water and air. And some came very easily and appeared. The first one, and always has been, is, as I'm a water sign, is the heron, and the heron was very present for me, an extraordinary bird that many of which live out and around here as well in the river. And herons have a slow patience. They stand in water and they wait, and they're very lonesome, very solitary birds, and very ancient, very kind of connected to the ancient world, to the reptilian world almost in a way. So I've really kind of identified with that sense of wisdom and slowness and watchfulness of the heron. Then the nightingale comes in as my earth bird, and it's the bird that grounds me, that keeps me connected to the land. They also are birds that nest in the ground. So they live a lot of their life very close to the earth, even though they sing very high up in the trees, but really they live and breed and are born almost on the ground. So they're my earth bird. Then my firebird came to me a few years ago as the buzzard, one of the great eagles of this predatory birds of this country, and that is a bird that has brought a lot of the sense of fire and heat and the sort of wisdom of that element of a bird that's come with a lot of learning and sort of renewal and destruction to bring new. There's a sort of part of the cycle of degrading, destroying that the buzzard has. And then I was long waiting for what's my air bird, what's my air species, and then in a moment of meditation, very early in the morning, I was like, I must find my air bird, and instantly in that moment, a kestrel appeared, another bird of prey, and they hover in the air, so they defy gravity, and they have this wonderful way of kind of holding in the wind. Even in strong winds, they can, like, they're so agile at being able to like hold their space, and they just are air. They become the air. So I realised the kestrel is my air bird. So there are my 4 species. I think that the 2 have always gone hand in hand. I think it's really important to remember that we have always been a scientific species, that the analytical, data-driven research and analysis that is affected with, you know, the huge number of organizations that are constantly trying to learn from nature and decode is super important, but it's not a new thing. Our cognitive capabilities have evolved, and I had the great privilege of spending time with a community that represent the kind of the birthplace, the crucible of where our scientific and our creative brains existed, and the two have always been hand in hand. Just before lockdown, I was in Namibia with the San Bushmen, who are the Khoisan people of the Kalahari, and they are ostensibly the oldest unbroken indigenous people who have maintained a similar subsistence in life. So they're still bow hunters and trackers, learning about how to live off the land, and they're beautiful people, much troubled by Western civilization, but maintaining an ancient way of living. And what they reveal is that our brains have evolved to learn to identify and analyze the land around us. Their life depends on it. But their life depends on being able to both read the footprints and understand the time and depth and the passage of that animal that they're trying to hunt to keep them alive. But at the same time, that all the knowledge that they must have about weather, moisture, time of year, the behavior of the animals, the movement of the land around, all the things that would be able to identify how old that print is and where that animal might be now and what its state of being is, so that they might be able to find it, are only viable if they also have the storytelling capacity, the ability to interpret and communicate that and embody the animal and become the creature, to become the springbok or the kudu. And so that ability to animate and to transform into the animal, as they will do, they will start to pretend and tell to each other, to everybody interpret what's happening, is the perfect marriage of scientific identification and cultural expression. And that's what we have done for, over 1 million years, essentially. And what we've done is we've separated the two. There are people now who analyze and can kind of, decode and categorize, and there are those who can kind of poeticize, and actually the artist needs the scientist and the scientist needs the artist, because one is useless without the communication or without the influence. I love listening to the science speak about the world around us, to be able to paint a picture that I can then fill the dots in and put the colour in as an artist. So I think the two are really go hand in hand. I think for me, the stories that inspire me the most are the journey stories, the ones about passage making and about transformation. And that I'm not going to specifically dwell on one, because that's a theme that is present within a lot of the folk songs that I sing and also write into, about this idea of transformation and about thresholds, and how these songs tell the story of people finding themselves. I think one that I would pick on is a song called Spencer the Rover, which is a Sussex song. It's many hundreds of years old, and it speaks of a man in depression who goes on the road to find healing, or is destitute, left his wife and family, and on the road he discovers this moment of glorious nature, and it starts his process of healing. And for me, that always, I can sing that over and over again, because in it, I feel that sense of ancient recognition of what nature can do to make one be well, to remind one of the important things in this world and what a teacher nature can be, but also not always in a very nice way, but also nature can wring you through its hands and or her hands and completely crush you and destroy you and ruin you, and it sometimes, you know, break you open, and there you find the kind of truth. So it's not a pleasant, oh, the birds were singing, the sun was shining and I felt better again. It's not as simple as that. Sometimes it really is about being kind of punished and scared and thrown through the mill. But nature can do that so well and reveal you new. So those are my favourite stories. Yeah, the song Spencer the Rover, which I recorded on my last album, an album called Old Wow, and that one was really touching on the power of nature to heal. It was much more about the kind of realm of spirituality, and that song has been one that, as I've sung it over the last 15 years, I've learnt more and more about what that song means, the things I wouldn't have understood when I was younger, and how much has started to kind of reveal as the truth within that song. And that I can identify with moments on that journey of this man remembering where he needs to be, i.e. that coming home. And for me, as the itinerant singer, you know, who's off on tour and going on adventures and often maybe perhaps running away a little bit, I've certainly discovered that sometimes the need to come home is innate within us all, no matter how far from the nest we leave. There is a intrinsic desire to come back for good reason. And it doesn't happen to everyone, but you know, I love home and I love leaving home, but I also know that sense of gravitational pull back and why that is. The quick answer is I've never understood why I've had this love for folk song. I think I'm just one of those people that has a deep adoration for the ancient. I also love the modern and the new and the what's to come, but I don't feel that they need to be in opposition. And folk songs for me, and the working with them, which is my the whole sort of what I do as a singer, the interpretation of them, is more about this idea that when I'm working with a folk song, when I'm singing one, when I'm holding one, I'm actually holding the wisdom and the remembering from generation after generation after generation behind me for 500, 1,000 years of people who have just passed that on from memory to memory to memory. Not often, sometimes never even written down. And that idea that I could be holding something that's been looked after by so many hundreds, thousands of people is a really powerful thing. That for me is the richest thing in the world, that inheritance. And that I am the person right now who's responsible for maintaining it to go on another 500,000 years. That feels like a massive duty. And the fact that the rest of the world doesn't do this and neglects that, for me, comes as a little bit of a kind of, have we forgotten what are the important things? And it's not just folk songs, it's also the knowledge of nature, that knowing of the story of each species, that not long ago our ancestors would have been just on a day-to-day basis telling what was going on, which bird had arrived, which animal had passed their door, who they'd seen in the forest. All these sorts of encounters were part of the bringing into a space of wonder and connection the world around us, the natural world around us. We don't pay attention to it anymore. It doesn't seem to be important. And I think the things that we hold as important these days are so irrelevant most of the time, and so devoid of any real soulful nourishment or sense of making us a really powerful people, that I find it my duty to take these old songs and reimagine them in a way that makes them, as I say, kind of irresistible, and a reminder of actually what we have lost, what we've let go of, lest we find ourselves in a place where we can no longer find them anymore. And I speak that for songs as I do for, you know, species or the natural world as a whole. So there's this thing about working with folk song that a lot of people think, oh my God, it's all so old and it's like not relevant anymore. And when it comes to finding themes from something that existed in the past to see how it relates to today, particularly in light, as I'm exploring within the climate and ecological catastrophe that is going on all around us, on our doorstep right now, as well as across the globe. It actually is rather extraordinary how much it doesn't feel like something new, but humans have been going through the ideas of eradication, of severance, of loss, of destruction, of genocide, and they all exist within these old songs. Their packaging in the stories that they come in seem very like out of date, but actually in the end it's the same motivations: power, greed, exploitation, subjugation, suppression, repression. It's all happening then as it happens now. It's just clothed differently, and the technology that is wielding it now is possibly far more powerful in its ability to manipulate and obliterate. So I don't need to do much work in finding the stories, but for me it's about, not always about how we just adjust every song and every concept that I'm trying to communicate, where I'm trying to tell a story for the now. I might take very little, one word of a song, and write and compose and arrange out of that a completely unique song. But something in there, like a homeopathic level, has given me the clue to being able to get to the final song. Sometimes a song comes so perfectly formed that I barely need to touch it to be able to insinuate within it what I think is relevant for now, and why it's a song that means exactly the same today as it did 300 years ago. I've done it 4 times now, and every time I'm like, I'm the wrong person for the job. I'm not a songwriter. I can't do this composition thing. And I feel very kind of inadequate. And before I know it, I realize that naturally I just like, oh, this and that. And actually song dreaming kind of came out many ways, but I realized that of course I'm going to make an album about nature. There's no question about it. It's the most important thing for the rest of my life, about communicating, speaking about the power of nature to inspire, to impress, to renew, and to support, to help us. So how does one tell that? And I didn't go, I want to make an album that's going to have this and this and tell us this, this and this. It was like what came out, and the album I had no control over, really. And I'm sure many artists will say the same thing. It just, what emerges is what emerges. And I think being too didactic of that can be quite destructive and clinical, and maybe not be as truthful or authentic as I think this work needs to be, if it's going to speak to other people, that is. Song Dreaming came out actually through an invitation. It was an invitation from a film director who was making a British feature film which came into the cinemas in spring of 2023. It was a beautiful film with the great actor Jim Broadbent, the Oscar-winning actor, one of Britain's finest. And the film is all about pilgrimage. and she had heard my last album, was like, I want you to make the music for this film. And it was a bit of a kind of beautiful invitation. You know, I love making music for films, it's songs for films. And here was a film with a subject that was so close to my heart, because pilgrimage making is essential to my practice as like how one finds relationship and learning and healing and all that from nature. So we talked lots about it, and we got the band together and we were like, here's the story, here are some of the scenes we're going to be shooting, go and make. So I started writing for the film. And actually what happened in the end was great, because we created loads of music and loads of sonic ideas that fitted within this film. And they chose some, and we made those songs for the film. But everything that we made that wasn't used for the film, we got to work with, I got to go take as my own. But they were all so much written as part of something that felt really like what I wanted to be saying right now. So it was just a matter of rewriting the words and then readapting the sound worlds and the arrangements, bringing more instruments, beginnings, middles and ends and that sort of thing. And suddenly Song Dreaming, not in an easy way, but emerged with much of the heart of it having been conceived out of one big story that we were working towards. So yeah, it was quite a privilege to get to do it, and the film was a great success. It's on Amazon at the moment and being watched and loved by many people, and feel very much that the album is in honour of that inspiration and that invitation. The first song on the album that is ostensibly the kind of single is called Meeting is a Pleasant Place, and it's the song about the album. So the album name, Song Dreaming, is call it a neologism. It's an invented word that I've created. I've created it out of this work that I do of how song and the act of singing is such a powerful relationship builder with nature. And it's something I do a lot of, is taking people out into nature, singing with nature, making music, both collectively, how I often say it kind of parts the ground, makes the earth suddenly transparent for us to see deep into our roots and our sense of lineage. And the songs are wonderful because these are ancient ancestral songs. When you sing them, that feeling of connected to all those people behind us who have walked in front of us and created those paths. So Song Dreaming is a little bit like a reimagining of what a British song line or dream time is, to borrow from the Australian Aboriginal tradition. And so Meeting is a Pleasant Place kind of is about that. It's an invitation for people to think about how our journey in nature, our time spent, that sense of place, that sense of connection can be so enhanced through song dreaming, through singing. And it's a call to action for people to be out in nature in a way that is so, encouraged with that sort of, that possibility. Because we think to go out in nature we have to go cycling or rock climbing, or we have to do some sort of recreation. It's like, no, why can't we be out in nature just in a creative, soulful, deep listening, meditative way? It's about mindfulness, but it's also about being mindful in that to the relationships of species around us that are so aware of our presence, and the ancestors that are so aware of our presence in many ways, and just opening our eyes to that. And we do that through our voices, I think. It's very easy for me to say this because I'm a singer and I can go out and sing, and trust me, I go out there and I feel really I feel that sense of resistance or cynicism, what a load of nonsense. I'm like, yeah, it is a load of nonsense, but it's only a load of nonsense because we have such a huge cultural resistance to that, and that's why I feel in some ways you've got to be really careful not to just kind of step out, go, okay, I'm going to be really spiritual now and sing, Because actually, that's not always the best way. For me, I position this in this way, and I think it's really important to contextualize it. Why do it? Because if we don't, we have so much to lose. It's an act of resistance. It's also an act of connection and you know, ancient way of us feeling kind of like, you know, at one with the earth. Actually, for me, it's about protest. It's about reclaiming something that has always been part of us. What I'm suggesting is not something new. And you can see it, as I have seen it, within many other indigenous communities. The act of gratitude, the act of prayer, the act of thanksgiving, of acknowledgement of the sacredness of that river, the power and sacredness of that tree, the richness of this species that we depend on. But we are so separated from nature, both legally and economically and nutritionally separated. We have no idea of our absolute dependence on those 6 inches of soil and a bit of rain to keep us alive 3 times a day, that we've been severed from that act of blessing. And that's what it is. It's a way of saying thank you to this bit of land. Although you didn't grow the very bit of food that I ate this morning, you are part of that bigger system that we are dependent on. And in this country, we have such horrific laws that separate us from being able to get out into nature, where we can go, where we can't go, the small amounts of places we can visit, the absolutely vast number of rivers that we can't swim in or even, you know, get anywhere near, the illegality of being able to spend time in nature in the way that we should be able to, and the appalling ravishing that we're doing of this country, Britain being the most nature depleted country in Europe, second to Ireland, and one of the worst offenders in the world in terms of our rate of nature depletion. It's like, actually, we have to be out there. And yeah, we should go out there and do some casual singing and song dreaming, whatever you want to call it. But I think also we should be out there cutting down fences. No, we should be out there fighting for access, fighting for a different relationship and a different stewardship of the land, because the two go hand in hand. And if you don't have one, you don't have the other. If we can't, and if we can't pray with the land, we can't protect it. That's why I think this work is so important. It's not just whimsical, floaty stuff. It's actually about protection. And that's, I think, what us humans have an absolute divine right and responsibility to be doing right now. Because if we don't, it'll be destroyed, and then we are. It's very simple. My happy place in nature is, there's a few places, well, it's always around the fire. I love, love, love sitting around a fire. I love sitting around a fire in the morning, on a sunny day in spring, when the birds are singing really strongly, and just that blowing a fire from last night, that there's still a few embers, and to get that fire going, that for me is like my favourite thing to do. I also love climbing trees, and there's a few trees that I love to climb and sit in. I think I'll have to say that my favourite tree is the lime tree, the linden tree, the lipa, because that is the tree of my name. So my surname Lee is a changed name from Polish origin, Lipnicki, which means lime tree. And they are such a beautiful tree, and their blossom is the finest smell in the whole world in June, early July, when they start to blossom. It's potent perfume. Their leaves in the very spring when they come out are delicious to eat. They're really kind of juicy and make great salad. Their bark you can turn into rope and fabric and things, and string. And they're just such an extraordinary and elegant tree. And so many things to love about the lime tree. So exciting thing about making an album is I get to play it live, and I'm going to be taking it on the road across the UK from March the 15th. The album is out on March the 15th, so we'll be able to hear it then. And I'll be on the road from there, starting in Manchester, going up to Scotland and all over, up and down, north and south, east and west. And you can find all the dates on my website. London will be in June the 13th in Hackney, the Round Chapel, which is a beautiful venue. And I'm probably going to have the choir that sings on the album come, trans voices, who are gender non-binary singers, which I'm really excited about. The thing that I'm going to be trying out on this tour is making a bit more of a sound journey. So it's going to be a bit more of an immersive experience. So the plan is about taking the audience as though they were going out into nature. And that's very much what I want to do, is to create this sense of people are being led both out into a place of great natural beauty, but also travel in time. So I'm going to be conjuring a bit of a new spell that I've never done in the live situation to try and invite people to come on a wander, on a pilgrimage, through their ears, in their imaginations. So if you want to come and see what that feels like and be part of my experiment, please do.
Yes, no, definitely. Now I'm even more excited than I was.